Hi, I'm Michael Bean. I'm a professional acting teacher, and this is your free lesson from myfreeactingclass.com for Tuesday, June the 15th. Just a heads up that next week, what is that, June 21st, 22nd, 23rd, will be our last class before the summer. Then we will be taking a 2-month break and starting again in September. And we're going to be reworking it and launching some pretty exciting stuff in September. And so we will be back. So soak up all the My Free Acting class that you can while you can, and then check us out. Check out myfreeactingclass.com for the newsletter that we're launching and the things that we've got lined up for September. So that's coming. Today we are doing self-tape review. So talking about what makes for a good on-camera self-tape, and then reviewing tapes from Christian Ridley, who is one of our fantastic students who is in the UK. His mom is here joining us, and Candy, who is one of our long-term My Free Acting class attenders and supporters. So first, I want to talk about camera technique, super quick. I know y'all are getting bored of this, but thank you for bearing with me because it's for the folks at home watching on YouTube. So if you are recording an audition on your phone or on your computer, whatever device you're using, make sure you do it horizontal, that you do not do it vertical. If you record vertical, it's problematic. That's not how TVs are oriented. They don't want to see it like that. So always horizontal. Clean background, nothing in the background behind you. Light reflected in your eyes is called an eye light. It can even be just like a lamp pointed at your face. If that's too blinding in your eyes, you just put a piece of paper over top of it. But light reflected in your eyes. If I turn off my light, you will see that it is not nearly as appealing. If I'm like, oh, here, oh, okay, I got another light there, but there. So now I'm very harshly side lit. This is something that I see in tapes all the time. People just don't think about it, and there's a window beside them, and so the light's coming a lot from the side of their face. You can see without light reflected in my eyes, I just don't look as alive and interesting, even though what I'm saying hopefully is just as interesting as it was a moment ago. And then we just turn my technology back on and we get eye light. So that's just a regular desk lamp, and you can see that even this regular desk lamp gives me plenty of eye light. Now I also have a ring light here, which sort of gives me a more general fill light, so it's not quite so hot on that one spot on my face, but it doesn't need to be fancy, especially when you're starting off. You don't have to spend a bunch of money. You just need a blank wall, anything that records, like your phone, stack of books to put it on, and a light to point in your eyeballs, and then you're pretty much good to go. If for audio, make sure that you are closer to your device than anybody else is. This is one of the real easy mistakes people make at the beginning. Is there's somebody holding the phone who's reading all the other lines, and so their voice sounds really loud because they're right beside the phone, and then you're way in front and your voice sounds like this because you're further away from the microphone. So that's an audio thing to be careful of. And that's sort of the basics. The other thing to think about when you're recording a tape is eye line, the line between your eyes and what you're looking at. Right now, my eye line is directly at camera, so right in the center of my device, right underneath my camera, because then it looks more or less like I'm looking right at you. Because that's what I want. Now, if you're recording an audition, if you're acting a scene of any kind, you want your eye line to be just off to one side or to the other side. So that's eye line. So eye line, eye light. The frame is medium close up, so top of your head down to just below your shoulders, or just below your armpits rather. This is a mistake I see all the time, and you can see that I just don't need this much space over my head, and in fact it just looks kind of weird. We don't really see this on film and TV because it is not good framing. Do not do this with your tapes. Tilt down, take the space off the top of your head, so we're just seeing you. Boom, right? We're going to see a little bit of movement, but we're nice in and close on your face, so your eyes are the thing that pops. So let's look at self-tapes, first for Candy and then for Christian. I want to say before we look at this that something that I was saying to folks just before the start of the lesson, that recently, Natalia submitted a self-tape, and I looked at it and offered a whole bunch of critique. Okay, here there's this thing that I think you missed in the script, and this here are my ideas, here are my notes, and then she booked that one. For her first ever booking for a Netflix show, and so Tapes do not have to be perfect. Over and over again, I continue to see folks booking roles from good enough self-tapes. And so I think actors are so often shut down by their inner perfectionist, the one that says like, I have to have all the equipment before I can practice. I can have to have everything set up perfectly before I can even like try recording lines. And my self-tape has to be perfect before I can show it to anybody. This is not accurate. Yeah, and this is why folks with audacity will often jump into the spotlight, because audacity is the thing that makes people go, sure, yeah, I don't know, I'll just put myself out there, woo! And of course, those people end up getting more practice. So I'm encouraging you to choose to be audacious. It's not a thing you have to feel. It is literally just a choice that you can make and be like, yep, you know what? I'm going to decide to just put myself out there, whether that's practicing on my own or submitting self-tapes for review in the self-tape review, or actually submitting tapes to agents. Another quick thing that came up just before the lesson, which is that Anthony, who's here on the lesson today, who's in New York City, was recently asked to audition by an agency, and then they asked him for a whole bunch of money, and he said no. Now, thankfully, that's exactly the right thing to do. If anybody's ever like, hey, we're this agency, we'd love to represent you, just pay us a whole bunch of money. They are a scam. They are not an actual agency. Get out of there, save your money. A real agency is very selective about who they sign up because they only pay commission. A real agency just takes a percentage of the money you make, which means they have a reason to want to make you money. Whereas if they do it the other way around and they're taking your money, they have no incentive to ever do anything for you except continue to take your money and laugh behind their hands, meh, 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 about how they are tricking you. Do not give money to anyone who pretends to be an agency. That's my rant for today. And Anthony did the right thing. We support him. Yeah, we're going to celebrate. Yeah, it's my celebration hands. Okay, let's look at Candy's self-tape and then we'll look at Christian's self-tape. So here it is. Candy Sparks. And this is Candy doing a monologue. She wanted it to be as though she was presenting at a sort of a high school graduation. This is sort of a particularly famous piece of like inspirational speech and poetry. Yeah, so periodically choosing more complex language to work on is an excellent exercise, right? It's the reason that a lot of actors do Shakespeare, even if they have no intention of performing Shakespeare, because man, if you can make 17th century poetry sound like this is just you talking, then you can probably handle just about anything that's written for film and TV. So choosing poetic language or choosing a poem to work instead of a monologue to work, like Candy has done here essentially, is a great exercise. And my guess is, and we haven't watched it yet, is that there will be spots of it that aren't as consistent in being naturalistic as her work normally is. And that's part of the challenge, right? You lift a heavier weight, and you expect that some of that you're going to be like, and every time you move on to like poetic text or historical text or something that is more challenging, of course it's going to get less consistent. That's the exercise. Now, in terms of camera setup, horizontal, check. Eye light reflecting her eyes, check. Medium close-up, check. Neutral background, check. And you'll hear that her audio is good because I know that Candy always sets that up. So there's all the camera technique things. For a reminder, her eye line as well is just beside the camera. So it doesn't look like she's looking right into her eyeballs, but her eye line is very close to the camera so we can see everything her face and eyes are doing.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, We unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Okay, so good clean read. If we were doing this in class, Candy, I would say that this is like a fantastic foundation because you're coming in naturalistic. Right now, you remember the word subtext, so it's like what's under the lines. Right now, you're coming in with my take on this is that your focus is just like, I want to be honest. I'm going to say these words that are kind of poetry and just like sound like a person talking. And so if that's your goal, I think that you're doing a solid job of it. Right now, the subtext that's coming across is, and it's no big deal. 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 Which is, I think, an exercise that people often do when they're trying to make something naturalistic. They're just kind of throwing it away. They're like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. However, that's not super engaging. Like, so if your goal is to like inspire a bunch of people, at a high school graduation, right now, you're not accomplishing that. And so the next step with this would be okay, great. I've got this foundation of being naturalistic. Now, how do I want these other people to feel? And the way that you find that, especially with text that is more poetic like this, is by really putting how you feel about each word into those words, right? So you've got this, I can't remember, partway through, you've got the sequence of like adjectives, this and this and this and this. And they're all like sort of 3-syllable, like poetic words. And you just rattle them off like apples, oranges, pears, celery, potatoes, right? Like you say them as without any color, without any texture, and so they're completely believable. It's completely, it's as though like it's just what I wanted to say, which you worked really hard at. And then the next step beyond that is like, what does each one mean to you? If you say gorgeous, can we hear gorgeous in your voice? If you say repulsive, can we hear repulsive in your voice? Right? Can you bring in what each word means to you? And one of the things that, and I learned this exercise really, I think, by doing Shakespeare. That's where one of the places where I lifted heavy weights, in order to understand how important that is. And so as an exercise, I would say, really go, take your time, and this is not recorded, go all the way in to every word, and then trust that when you come back to just talking, some of that will stay with you, right? So if it's sunshine, you go sunshine, and curiosity, and amazingness, and and you allow yourself to fully express it, so that then when you come back to just like sunshine and curiosity and amazingness, there's more of that aliveness, and then you take it into, how do I want them to feel? And right, and if you're talking to a whole bunch of teenagers, you're like, the right, is it life is amazing, is it like is it you have so much to look forward to, is it like you are more awesome than you think, right? So that it's not about like, here's what I'm putting on you. It's like, come on, people, like, right? And maybe something close to that, because of this, the greatest fear is not that you're blah blah blah, but it's that you're amazing. Like, come on, people. And I think that that's something that probably comes pretty naturally to you, is like seeing awesomeness in other people and lifting them up. So that's something that you have in you that you can draw on and bring into this particular piece of work. Let's look at some of Christian's tapes. Does it matter which one we look at first, Claudine?
We can look at Ernie first.
Okay, let's look at Ernie first. Here it comes.
Sven, if you would please.
Okay, so neutral background, check. Highlight, check. Medium close-up, check. Right? There's no headroom. Real nice. You can go a little bit closer even if you wanted to, but I don't know what the tape is like. Maybe he's got to move around a little bit. The eye line is right beside the camera, so that's all of the camera stuff. The only adjustment that I might make to this, is just to move him back just a smidge, so that there's less space behind him than there is in front of him. That's called nose room, and it's just one of those things that you'll see that they do on camera. So if I sort of pop back to me for a second, if I'm talking to somebody on this side of the camera and I'm in a film and TV scene, it's very unusual for there to be this much space behind my head unless the focus is for you really to watch what's happening over my shoulder. What's normal is for me to have this space in front of me. No, I'm talking to this person over here, and then to cut to them with this space in front of them, and that kind of cues their visually, like this is the side I'm talking to. It's not a big deal for self-tapes. Like it's really one of those tiny tweaks, but it's the only camera technique thing that I can see that you might want to play with there.
I've got a bike. You've got 3 wheels. Handlebar on the handlebar.
Stop, you're going to make me jealous.
I like your bike too.
Thank you.
So it could do the bell.
Who brought you your bike?
My mum and dad for Christmas.
You must miss him, your dad.
Am I a wicked person?
Of course you aren't.
The angry lady in the church said I am.
The angry lady in the church is wrong. When you miss someone like you miss your dad, it makes you feel all sorts of things. Sad, angry.
I don't want to speak about him. I want to talk about bikes and dogs.
Who doesn't want to talk about bikes and dogs?
I think Dickens might be my favorite dog because of his nice shiny fur.
Right, so you can see that he sounds like this is just what he wanted to say. Christian's been doing this for a while, like he's got plenty of practice, and so the delivery is really solid, right? Like foundation of believability again. One of the things that I think is where there's potential to continue to explore here, or potential to grow, is that it's that he's very, very still. If I had to guess, like my guess is that he moved a lot, when he was first starting, and so there was like a certain amount of like effort in saying like, okay, no, you've got to hold still, you've got to hold still, you've got to hold still, because kids, especially when they're really young, do a lot of like dancing around and ends up being super distracting. But what's happening now is that he's so still, that it's that he's not coming across at least to my eyes, with as much kid energy as he probably actually has in him. And maybe he is just like a super calm, chill, still guy. The emotional arc of the scene and sort of understanding the stuff about the dad and the angry lady at the church, that stuff's coming through loud and clear. And so I would break this up a little bit. I would say, if I was working with him, I would say, okay, first let's run the words. Great, you got the words. We understand the story. Now, before we run it for real, let's talk about where you physically are. Right, so you're going to walk up to so start by like walking up to the lady and like reach out and touch her bicycle bell, and then at this point you're going to turn as though you're going to leave, like, or you're going to look over at the church, and that's going to make you before you think about, say, that's like, am I a bad person, right? So that you just put a little bit of movement in it, so that we're seeing more of him as a kid. The other thing, tool that I've been playing with my students that you might just want to play with, Claudine, is to improvise into the scene. One of the things that I've said in this lesson, but I just think it's worth coming back to, is that I got feedback recently from a director who is here in Vancouver to shoot a new series, that he's getting tapes on his phone, 100, 150 of them at a time, and he's only watching the first 10 seconds of them. That unless something grabs him, he's only watching the first 10 seconds. So I would say in particular, making the first 10 seconds more visually engaging, making it more alive, making some bolder choices there, because I think it takes about like 20 seconds before Christian gets into this, and really the script gets into stuff that's got more emotional arc to it. So one of the things that you can do to bring that more to life is go, okay, here's what's happening is you see the bike and basically just like fully improvise it. Get him to be, oh, wow, that's an amazing bike. Oh, I like bike, like whatever it is, doesn't matter what comes out of his mouth because you're gonna cut it off and you're not gonna put it in the tape. But just so he's got like that little bit of extra movement and sparkle and he's really in it. And that's right where you pick up for the dialogue. Does that make sense? So that's all of those are things that you could play with, with his next tape. And particularly, I think the improvising in is something that that has my attention right now, to try and really grab people's attention in that first 10, 15 seconds. And Christian has enough stillness in him that I think that you can add that now you can add that next piece of, okay, now you're like you're a person in a place doing a thing. So let's try and imagine not just like what you're saying, but where you are and what you're doing with your body. You don't, and especially at his age, you don't have to explain why. You don't have to say you're going to look at the church and that's going to make you think of the angry lady. You can literally just sort of rehearse it into the scene before you start playing it. Like, okay, you're going to say these lines and then you don't want to talk to her anymore. You're going to turn, you're going to look at the plug on the corner, and the end, or you find like a physical object in the house to be like, okay, cool, that's going to be the eyeline for the church. You're going to look at that, you're going to think to yourself for a second, and then you're going to come back. Right, like that you can rehearse some of that stuff in to tell the story visually. It doesn't have to be like, I'm now going to use my face to show you the subtext. So let's quickly watch that second tape and see what's alive in there, and that'll be it for today's lesson. Good. So this is exactly what I meant by a tighter medium close-up. So it's great that we've got this as a second example. I don't know what it's like for y'all watching, but for me, this one, because I can just see more of Christian's eyes, it pops that much more. So I'm just scooching in that little bit closer like you did with this one. Hopefully that'll also make his voice a little bit louder, which always, if possible, we want the actor to be louder than the reader. All right. Backdrop check, eyeline check, highlight check, all the things.
When's Mummy coming home?
A couple of days.
Not tonight.
No, not tonight.
Are you and Mummy still married?
Yes, for now.
Then why aren't you here together?
We don't want to argue. We know it upsets you.
Will we still go on holiday?
Not for a while. Money's tight.
We're going to Kenpo. We're Mummy's friends.
Well, there you go.
Will you get a new wife? Will she move in here as well?
No, Mummy's my wife. We're not getting divorced. She just doesn't know that yet.
Great. So the same kind of basic thing I'm seeing here is a stillness. Just look how still it is for these first 10 seconds, right? Still and slow. And so there, Christian goes out, for or seems to go out for a lot of these roles where he's got to like feel things, and he's got a, I think, a good understanding of that emotionally. So the coaching that you're doing, or his understanding of the work. Really, I so appreciate you sharing these because I think it's really useful, for the parents who are watching to think about how they can support their young folks. And just props to Christian for doing the good work and being bold and putting himself out there, and you for backing him up. And to get a sense of like where they are or what the relationship is in that first 10 seconds, to just like shake it up a little bit in some way. My guess is that, Claudine, that you have experience of Christian as a little bit messier, a little bit rowdier, than comes through in his work, and it would be fun to see if there's a way to invite that in without sort of taking him completely out of the format of film and TV acting. Clem, do you have any questions about either of those tapes? They're both really solid tapes, and I'm just throwing ideas at you for exploration.
No, thank you for the feedback. That's useful. Yeah, it's good to Yeah, because after you've done them sometimes, and I've taken a few cuts of them, and I say to him, oh, maybe you could do it again, but put this in. But then there's things that he's done really good, and I think, oh, then I might not get that bit. So you can only do so many takes with them. And then I notice things that maybe we did miss, but then I maybe not capture it again. So I just go for the best one. But yeah, the thing is, it's sometimes it's hard with the first 10 seconds, because I do know that. But then with the first 10 seconds, it can be hard when it's got to be serious or something.
You can still put him in a place. You can give him behavior that tells the story, right? You can say, come in and take off your jacket and see dad and walk up to him, right? You can, and even if you cut that out, anything that gets him not, now I'm an actor saying lines and being in this.
But he's in bed. He's in bed, just about to go to sleep.
Then you put a chair and you put it right near the back wall so he can lean on the back wall, and you give him a blanket he can tuck under his armpits, or a bear that he can snuggle, and and it starts with the the bear or the blanket, right? So there's always physical behavior that you can bring in to the top of the scene. It doesn't have to be doesn't have to be running around, and we probably don't want that much running around, but something so that it's more alive, right? So if the idea is he's worried about his mom not being there, then maybe he's sort of fussing with the blanket, and making sure his bear is okay, and we get behavior that says I'm concerned, so that he doesn't have, so he's disobligated from doing it with his face. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah.
And I just think that he's really ready to take notes like that. One of the things that can help in terms of the getting the having those first couple of takes be usable, which I really get you. So often in my early days of coaching, I'd be like, okay, Candy, we'll do this thing. Oh, it was so great, but we just want to make this one little adjustment. And then Candy and I would spend 45 minutes going over and over and over the scene, trying to get this technical adjustment. And then ultimately we'd go back and send the first take, because the first take was the one that was the most interesting, the most alive. And it was well, actually, what matters more than the technical stuff is the one where you were feeling it more. So these days when I'm coaching, what I will typically do is go, okay, we're not going to act it yet. We're just going to run the words until you've got the words. Okay, now we're going to run the words and the actions, right? So you're going to snuggle the bear. You're going to, and if somebody starts going feel the feels, I'm okay, good, that's great, but you're going to save that. Don't do the acting yet. Right now, we're just doing the words, and and you get the words and the actions and the eye lines and anything that's going to basically require thinking out of the way. Just rehearse all of that. And then you're okay, are you ready to do this for real? Great. And then you go into it when you've got all of the physical behavior and things set, and that can really be supportive, particularly of young folks, I think.
So is it okay for kids to have props like that, to have a blanket and a teddy?
100%.
Or you don't think it's too distracting?
I mean, I'm sure there are teddy bears out there that would be too distracting. I think that that a blanket, a coat, a cup, a pen, a clipboard, right? I like having something actually in my hands to hold, and I think that if you are concerned about it, you can always have them be mimed objects. Right, you can say snuggle the teddy bear, but have it not really be there. If that's not going to, if Christian's not going to feel too weird about that, it's really just to get the sense that, like I said, this person isn't an actor who's utterly still, and getting ready to say their lines as an actor, but this is a person who's in a place doing a physical thing with their body, and just having this conversation as part of it. And the difference movement-wise is very, very subtle. And I have a hunch that Christian is just still carrying in his body the remainder of the effortful practice that he put in to find stillness. And so now I think he's ready to invite some of that movement back in.
Okay.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Claudine, for submitting tapes today. Thank you, folks, for your work. And I will be here. Leanne, I talked to Leanne Lapp, and she extends her apologies for not being able to make the last couple of Mondays. She was like, "It's been so crazy," and I guess I didn't get I didn't get the message, or I would have warned you all in advance. So anybody who showed up, and was like, "Where's Leanne?" She's fine. But I'm going to be covering class next Monday. So next week I'll be doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we're going to be taking a long break. So come next week and soak up as much goodness as possible. And before we go next week, I promise I will point you at some cool resources and things that you can explore over the summertime, and then we'll get started properly in the fall again. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.